The following podcast is a Jill Devine Media production.
Christianity has become known for judgy people, strange words, ancient stories, confusing rules, and a members-only mindset. This is why I stayed away from the church for so long, but it's not supposed to be that way. I'm Jill Devine, a former radio personality with 3 tattoos, a love for a good tequila, and who's never read the entire Bible. Yet, here I am, hosting a podcast about faith. The Normal Goes a Long Way podcast is your home for real conversations with real people using real language about how faith and real life intersect. Welcome to the conversation.
Welcome back to Normal Goes a Long Way. I'm your host, Jill Devine, and we're back with more high schoolers. Well, that's kind of a lie. We'll explain in just a minute. But Ryan, we had Audrey and Jenna on our last episodes, and we have some more ladies on. I want to set this up real fast, though, because if you have been a listener of the podcast, you have heard from Pastor Jim Mueller. And he is our lead pastor at where Ryan and I work and serve, and that's at Messiah in St. Charles. That's a suburb outside of the St. Louis area. And so he's been on a few times, and now we roped his daughter in. So Ryan, you're going to do your magic like you did the last time. You're going to talk to these ladies. I'll chime in when I feel like it, when I want to just kind of derail that combo.
Yes, please derail as you see fit.
Right.
You're so good at that.
Thanks.
But
derailing.
Yes. In a positive way, though.
Okay,
in a
thank
good way.
you.
Well, hey, we've got Ivy and Maddie here with us today. Ivy just graduated high school, so she is a former high school student, fresh out. So she is excited for the next stage of life. Maddie here is about to start senior year. And while our last guests, Audrey and Jenna, they were public school, Ivy and Maddie go to a local private school here in the St. Louis area. And so that's an interesting thing about this area, too. The St. Louis area is full of this public school, private school divide. And so that's why I thought it was important to have people from both sides on this podcast, hearing from the public school kids, hearing from the private school kids. Later on, we're going to have some guys come in. And as I mentioned last episode, we're going to have a teacher on, too. So we've got a bunch of different voices coming at us. Ivy, how are you feeling being done with high school? Tell us about that first.
Well, it's kind of hard to process. There was a lot going on in high school, and now I feel like I have nothing going on. So I just sit at home every day, and I'm like, what do I do?
You know, I think this is for me, I remember this phase of just finishing high school and feeling this combination of freedom and a little sadness. The sadness kind of kicked in when I realized, okay, I'm moving far away for college, and all my friends are kind of staying back here. My family's staying back here. So you're kind of in the exciting, stage of this process,
Yes.
But you're kind of going far away for school, aren't you?
I am. I'm moving to Arizona, Flagstaff. I'm going to Northern Arizona University. I'm very excited, but it is very far.
That is where? The Southwest United States, right? You got some deserts. You've got Grand Canyon. So it is going to be a different place than Missouri. Definitely not the Midwest. But actually tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Ivy, you aren't a native to Missouri. Where did you go to school? What were you involved in there? And give us one word you'd use to describe Maddie. And Maddie, same for you. Where do you go to school? What are you plugged into there? And one word you'd use to describe Ivy.
Okay. So I went to Lutheran High School of St. Charles. I loved it. I went for my last 3 years of school. So my freshman year, I was in public school in Texas. And then we moved for my dad's job to St. Louis. And so now we go to Messiah and Lutheran High. And at Lutheran High, I was really involved in dance. I also did student ambassadors and sometimes NHS. I did like some kind of random pop-in clubs, but not a lot, I guess. And then one word I would describe Maddie. Maddie is very thoughtful. She always knows like a good thing to say, but she's also a good listener. Yeah, I would say really thoughtful.
So nice of you, Ivy.
All right, Maddie, tell us about you and your word you'd use to describe Ivy.
Okay, so for middle school, I went to a public middle school, in Winfield, which is right by my house. But now I go to Lutheran High School, and I'm going to be a senior. And it's like a 35-minute drive, but it's worth it. And I'm also on the dance team. And I'm also in student council, student ambassadors, and I'm the secretary at NHS. So that's like kind of big. That's about it. And then one word to describe Ivy would be, probably, I would say loyal. I feel like she's like, I can like trust her with a lot of stuff too, and like trustworthy, but definitely loyal because like I can tell her stuff and I know she's gonna like she's gonna take it to heart. She's not just gonna like blow it off her chest, you know. And I feel like I can trust her with stuff. So
I like those words for both of you. That's interesting. Ivy, I knew some of your backstory. Maddie, I didn't know it as much, but so you both went from public to private school. I want to hear about that transition for you. You went to a public school in Texas, public school in suburban St. Louis. Now you got so now you got a private school. So tell us what that transition was like. Was it weird? Was it fun? Did you love it?
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I went to public school my whole life before I went to Lutheran High. So I really liked public school, actually. And my public high school was really big, and there were so many things I could be involved in. Like, we had this ginormous theater program that I loved being a part of. And we had a dance team that I was on, really big. And then I came and we decided to go to Lutheran High because a lot of people at our church went and they really liked the school, and I didn't know where I was going to go. So I decided that was probably a good place to go. And it's really small, so there's less things to be involved in. But I would say the programs that are really good at our school are very good. Like, we have a really good robotics program. I'm not in that, but like they're very good. And I don't even know if I had that in public school. Yeah, we have a really good football team. Our dance team's good. Less things to be involved in, though.
We did not have a robotics team at my school growing up either, so it is a plus, I guess.
Fun, yes.
I am kind of surprised, though, that with your dad being a pastor, that you were in public school all the way up until your sophomore year.
Yeah.
And what was that decision like, or were you involved in that decision? Do you know how that came about?
Well, so in Texas, especially where I just moved from, I lived in Dallas, there's not that many private schools. Like, I think I remember like maybe 3, and they were like for either like very rich kids or like people that were like involved in like cheer or something. So they had like almost no time to be at school, or like gymnastics. Like gymnastics, you really can't be involved in a lot of other things if you're like very competitive. So there was no reason for me to like go to private school, and we just never considered it. And then when we moved to St. Louis, there was like all these people that went to private school. Like, everyone was talking about private school. And they're like, are you going to this private school? Are you going to this private school? And I was like, what? That's an option?
Did it feel weird?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so weird. And I was like, okay, like I get to wear a uniform. Like, that's kind of cool. I like was excited about wearing a uniform because I didn't want to pick out my outfit every day. Like, that's such a struggle. Like, so I was excited.
Okay.
So you saw the uniform as freedom.
Yes, freedom.
It freed up some mind space. Interesting. Okay.
I don't like the uniforms. I you like the uniform. I just don't.
Did you attend church before going to Lutheran High?
No, not really. I like went for like Easter and for Christmas with my family, but I didn't attend like a regular Sunday church.
Okay, so then I want to start with that question then, because I think I kind of understand maybe for you, Ivy, what this would be like. But you go from public school, which is what I did, to a Christian private school. How much in your face is the Jesus talk?
I want to know that too.
So my sister went to Lutheran High before me, so she was 4 years, and so when she was a senior, I was a freshman. So she kind of told me like it was gonna be like, because I was in Intro to Gospel because I didn't know anything, and I like walked in and we started saying,
the Lord's Prayer.
And I had no idea what that was as a freshman, and I was like, what am I getting myself into? I was like, I don't know, like, and then everyone was carrying, like, we, like, had to carry my Bible around because it didn't fit in my book bag, and I was like, what am I doing right now? But, no, and then we had chapel and small groups, and I had, like, at my old school, we'd have, like, assemblies for, like, sports. Like, we would never have, like, get together and do it because it's a public school, So it kind of was really like in my face right when I stepped into Lutheran High, and especially like you walk in and there's like a big like cross right there, and I'm like, I just never like experienced that before.
Did it feel weird?
Yeah.
For a while?
Yeah.
Does it still feel weird, or have you gotten used to it?
It still feels weird because still like in my my religion classes, I'm still like a little bit behind everyone. Like actually a lot behind everyone.
Yeah.
But I do try my best in classes, so.
So why did your parents decide to send you to Lutheran High and your sister?
Yeah. So my grandma actually used to be the cheer coach at Lutheran High, and my aunts went through Lutheran High, and they were on the like pom squad. And right whenever my grandma quit doing the cheer coach is when my sister came, but she was already enrolled, so she was just going to try it out. And so she joined with the new coach, and she liked it and went through all 4 years. So then I just joined in my freshman year.
So, Maddie, this is interesting because you not only didn't grow up in our church, you didn't necessarily grow up going to church regularly at all. So now you're kind of plugged in to what we do at Messiah. Tell me, how did that happen? How did you end up showing up to our high school environments on Sunday nights? And Ivy, you can also share some of this story too, because you're a part of it as well.
I remember the first time I came, it wasn't actually to church. It was to like a pool thing last summer, but it was just for leaders. And I was with Ivy, and I like showed up, and it was like, and then I was like, I like these people. And then like I went to the summer things with you.
Yeah.
I think that was only like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. We like went to summer events. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the pool event, but the summer events, I mean, I did throw them, so I did put them on. Were you at the volleyball tournament?
Yeah,
First time you did it? Okay. Okay, that's right.
Second place.
Oh, man, I love that. That was fun. Interesting. So that was how you got plugged in. Now, you know, we've had guests come to our environments, and some of them show up once and never come back, and I'm glad we got to bless them that one time, but you stay connected. And I noticed there have been Sundays you've come when Ivy wasn't there, and I thought that was very interesting.
I always text her, are you going to be here tonight? And I'm like, on the way. And she's like, no. I'm like, oh no. And I still go.
Oh, man. Hey, it is.
But Grace is there too. And like all my other friends.
Well, okay, so this is an important point, that you can do great stuff as a church or as a ministry, but if you don't have the relationships and the community as a part of it, that's oftentimes what a lot of people are missing or are looking for. I have been to churches myself that I loved. Their worship was great and their preaching was great, but I didn't feel connected. I didn't have people there. And so it's hard to come back when you don't know someone. And so for you, talk about like what community, have you found community being plugged in here? Clearly Ivy's a very important friend in your life, and so you want to be there with her, but tell us a little bit about that.
I like the community at Messiah. Like I've gone to a few other churches, like youth groups trying to get involved, and I would go like one time, and I just like feel like everyone was like a clique and wouldn't really talk to me. But right when I came to Messiah, I feel like it was just like I connected with so many people that like I knew Audrey, like she went to school with me, but I haven't like talked to her. And then we came to Messiah and we like talked to each other again. And I was like, I didn't know I was gonna like be friends with her again because like I haven't connected with her throughout like the 2 years. But then I just feel like it's more like a community at Messiah, and like I always look forward to like it's on my alarms like to leave, and like I bring my brother now. He's going to a few things, and like all the guys like hang out with him, and I just think it's fun for him to even get connected into.
Yeah. Your brother, by the way, killed it in the hot wing eating contest the other week. Let me just say that.
He was very excited. I came home to my mom. Guess what I did? And I was like, oh, you can show it. You can tell her.
I have got some pictures you need to see from that because it was quite funny. Ivy, yes. When you first came to Messiah, so I got a bunch of teenagers together once and said, we need to do what we're doing better. And you were part of that initial conversation. And I remember telling you that, you know, you were pretty fresh. I think literally a freshman or no,
I was a sophomore.
You were a sophomore. Mm-hmm. So you were not only new to Messiah, you were new to your school. Yes. And I remember saying, you're going to find people, you're going to find friends at your school. it took some time, but how did you get connected to Maddie at school, and how did you start just inviting her to our church? I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. So I met Maddie through dance. We were on the same dance team. She joined the dance team because of her sister Ella, and I had done dance whenever I lived in Texas. So then I wanted to do dance when I got here, and my coaches like had contacted like my coach at my school. So she was like super excited that I was coming. They're like, a dancer from Texas. And so I was so excited. But Maddie and I actually didn't really talk like our first year of being on the team together. I don't really know why, but I don't know. But at that time, I would say probably wasn't like that comfortable to invite people. I was like really excited about Messiah, and I was excited about what like Ryan wanted for it, and what like the rest of the kids that we like talked to in that like leadership group or whatever like wanted. But I was so new that I like didn't really know who all these people were, and like I was going with my brother and my younger sister, and they were really new to everything. And so I think like the three of us were like a little scared at times, and we're like, I don't know what to do here. But then as I got more comfortable and like saw kind of more of our like visions coming to life about what we wanted like youth group to look like, I was like, oh, like I really want to like take some of my friends here. So I know I've taken like some other dance people before, but Maddie has expressed like wanting to know more about God to me. And that made me like really excited. I was like, okay, I can bring like a friend to youth group who actually like will really want to be here.
Yeah.
And she liked it. So she kept coming.
As we're sitting here talking, I'm like looking at Maddie, and it hit me. We have met before. And I know this because I believe it was at Easter. So for our church, we take reservations and RSVPs, and I was half in charge of that, and I was helping check people in. And I remember seeing your name, and you showed up. It was just you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's only one of her. Okay. I mean, I just started thinking, what the heck? And then I don't remember exactly if Ivy, you came out and you said, this is my friend, or you said that you were here with Ivy. And I thought, oh, that's super cool. That's really cool. And then I think maybe it happened again, maybe just random coming. But then also, was this Easter too that you stuck around for 2 services, Ivy? So Ivy stuck around for 2 services, and she said, I'm just fired up for Jesus. I just want some more Jesus
There we
in my
go.
life. I'm like, who are these people? These like teenage girls. It actually can happen to my girls. They could be like this. But I mean, I know you two aren't perfect, but when I see that love and I see that curiosity, like I see me and you, Maddie. I mean, just to be able to just show up and do that, that's, give yourself some credit for that.
I remember filling out the thing, and I was texting Ivy, and all the services were filled up, and I was like, Ivy, which one are you gonna go to? And then I like based it off there, and the only one open was like the 8 a.m. one, and I was like, oh. I was like, are you gonna be at the next one? So Ivy stayed for 2 services.
I went to all 3. Actually.
That is
you went to
awesome.
all 3?
I snuck into the last one too. I was
Whoa,
really
that's
feeling
better than me.
Jesus.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
That's so funny, and that is so cool. Maddie, you said, or maybe it's you, Ivy, you're talking about how you still have some questions about your faith, and you're still trying to know who God is more, which, by the way, we all are. Jill is.
I'm 45, and I still don't have a clue.
What are some of those questions, and what are you learning about God? What are you wanting to understand about him better?
Oh, there's so much. Like, I definitely get some questions during like chapel, during assemblies and stuff when we like meet. I feel like I get sometimes lost in the message because I just don't know like the backstory to some of it, or like the context that we're in, unlike my peers around me that are like, oh, this happened before. I'm like Grace was sat by me, and I'm always like, what's happening? And she's always like, she has to like fill me in like really quick, because I like just don't, I kind of don't have, I haven't learned about it as much. So, like what I have learned is the basic of basic, because I went through Intro to Gospel, and then I skipped Old Testament. So I don't know much about the Old Testament, and I skipped New Testament class to be with, like, the juniors and, like, my grade. So there is a lot that I still, like, don't know.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so important to remember. Oftentimes, when we're up front as a teacher, as someone who speaks up front, it's very easy to get in a place of, you know, the story of David and Goliath, right? Well, just like in that story, and you can skip over that story and just assume everyone in the audience knows it because you're at a private Christian school or whatever. There's always someone in your audience. And if there isn't, you should assume there's someone in your audience that doesn't know the stories that you might think they know. And
Amen.
I have learned that, my time with our confirmation, our middle school students has really taught me that you've got to slow down and walk them through this so that they feel invited and included. I'm really glad you have friends and connections at your school that can be there on the side, like, okay, so this is what happened there. And
because they know I don't know that much either. So, like, one time I don't know where I was, but they were saying, like, a really important story, and I was like, and, like, everyone was answering questions about it, and then it got to me, and I was like, I, like, truly don't know because, like, I never really, like, learned about this. I've never really dove into this story, so it gets confusing at times for sure.
And I'm glad that, Ivy, you've been there as well, and it sounds like there are multiple people, Maddie, in your life that have been there to connect you to this greater story. I want to know, though, being in a private school, I think sometimes people assume if I send my kids to private school, they're going to be around good kids that don't do anything wrong. And that's an over-exaggeration. But I think there is this idea that there's somehow less brokenness in a private Christian school than in a public school. Is that true? Is that not quite accurate? What's the culture like at a private school?
I would say they definitely encourage good behavior more than a public school would. But one thing I would say is, like, everyone's broken, and definitely there's many people at our school that are broken. And our school is actually not, like, all Christian at all. There were, like, we have these big projects our senior year that you have to interview a non-Christian and, like, learn about their faith and ask them questions about it, interview them. And, like, there's at least 10 people in every class that interview someone from our school, because there are people from our school that are not Christians and they never become Christians while they're at our school. And their parents send them there because they have good sports, or they just want them to be in a more positive environment, maybe. And I would say sometimes I feel like it's more positive. I would say that, like, in public school, you have, like, sometimes, like, cops just standing around, and I understand why, but, like, they're not looking for, like, us to do bad things at our school. Like, they actually reward us when we do good things. They have, like, the Cougar Character Award every, like, quarter of the semester. They, like, recognize 4 students, 1 from each grade, that, like, have done, like, above and beyond, like, Christian service. They've just been a good kid. And some of them aren't Christian. Like, you don't have to be Christian to get that award. And so I like that they, like, are looking for good things too. And they're not just constantly, like, looking like, oh, are you doing something illegal? Like, are you doing something that you should not be doing in high school? Should I dress code you? Like, that kind of stuff. And I feel like my teachers don't look for that here. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a Christian to you?
That is a hard question. I feel like there's not really an answer to what does it mean to be a Christian. It kind of depends on the person. So
I guess I ask that because when you said that there are kids in your school that aren't Christians, how do you define that?
Well, so I know some kids that are atheists that go to my school, or, like, they're Jewish or, like, Muslim or something. They, like, identify with a different religion, which would mean not Christian to me personally. That doesn't mean that they don't believe in a God, though. And so I think it's kind of maybe more of a debate, like, do they believe in God, or, like, are they identifying with who Christians identify with? A lot of, like, denominations are in, like, the Christian church, and some people believe that, like, certain people are Christians and some people believe those people aren't. So, like, Mormons. Some people don't find Mormons to be Christians and some people do find Mormons to be Christians. And it's like, how do we debate that? It doesn't directly say in the Bible, like, you know, this section of Christianity is not actually Christianity. Like, we don't know.
I'm curious what some of those students, I mean, they, from what I know of your school, you know, they're coming every day to a devotion or a gospel or small group, so they have direct contact with the good news. So what are their takeaways? Are they like, oh, I see things differently now, or this is even weirder than I thought? You know, what are their thoughts being in a Christian environment and not being a believer?
One of my friends plays football, and he technically does not believe that he is Christian. I'm not exactly sure what he identifies as, but he does believe in God. And he'll, like get a touchdown or something. He's pointing up to the sky. He's like, this is all for you, God, So clearly he's connected to something there.
Yeah, something.
And I don't know, like for him, like I think he actually does like the devotionals and stuff, even though technically he would say he's not a Christian. And everyone that comes and speaks to us is identifying as a Christian. But because we're talking about God, he feels like it relates to him. And I don't know, he likes hearing about it.
Do you ever hear them pushing back on anything they teach or any of the devotions or chapels?
Yeah, there's some kids like in our religion classes. I feel like you've probably seen this too, that like they'll raise questions or whatever to the teachers. There's actually quite a bit of that. They'll talk about like something Christian, especially if it's like controversial, like we're talking about like gay rights or something like that. Like there's a lot of kids that will raise their hand and they're like, I don't believe that to be true. Or like, I don't think it says that in the Bible or something like that. Or I don't know, people that like aren't even Christian will like, they'll try to like talk to the teacher about it.
Here's what I love about these conversations. We are spending a lot of time on school, which is very interesting to me because chapel, I want to bring that up. So I wrote down chapel at the high school level, ? So going to chapel for me as a church worker, and now that my daughters are going to a private Christian school, I had no idea what it was about. And I hope I don't hope nobody takes offense to this, but I do feel like when you go to chapel, it's the same thing. You're awesome. God loves you, which is all, that's true. It is. And this is how you should know you're great. It's like, okay, when you have early childhood to 8th grade, you can't get too in depth, right? You have to just preach that word of the love and whatever. But what is it like at the high school level? Because Maddie, you were talking about not understanding some things. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, how does that work? What is that like? And maybe for the listener that doesn't really understand what chapel is, do you want to go through that, Ryan? Or how do you explain that? Because nobody explained it to me.
How do I do a chapel?
No,
or
like, what is chapel? Oh. I mean, would you say it is the one day of the week that the school comes together, kind of like your own worship, like a Sunday? Would you?
Yeah, it's so Lutheran High specifically. It's a little different because they do, there are 2 devotions during the week, which is basically a guy comes up or girl, they give a little 10, 15-minute talk and walk away. Chapel's basically that with some music. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit longer. Liturgy sometimes, yeah. So it's a pretty basic format.
Okay.
But to me, I see a chapel at their school and at our school, but to me, this is the biggest group of unchurched people that I'm going to get to speak to for a while. Because they're showing up to our building on a Sunday night, they're churched. But clearly, as what they've said, there's a lot of unchurched people in that audience. And so if I have one more message to give to them, what am I going to tell them? If this is the last time they're going to listen to anyone up there on a Wednesday or a Monday or Friday, maybe they're coming in that room and they're thinking, I'm bored of this. I'm sick of it. This is my last one that I'm really going to listen to. And from here on out, I'm putting my headphones in and I don't care. What does that kid need to hear? How can I give them a compelling view of the gospel? How can God speak through me? What do they need to hear about God? I love it because of that. It's a different space than what we do on a Wednesday night or Sunday night for our students, just for that reason alone. It kind of excites me to get in that room and to speak to people like that. To speak to people like Maddie that are like, it's a good reminder that there are people that don't know all these stories that I grew up hearing, that a lot of other people didn't.
It blows my mind that you said going to a chapel, let's just say high school. Let's not take K through 8th. Going to a high school Christian school, you have the opportunity to speak to more unchurched individuals than whatever on a Sunday.
I say unchurched. I also use the words maybe unconnected. Maybe they're a member at a church, but they don't go anymore. And I don't know what the number is, but I know, if they're a regular person showing up in our environments, they're churched because they're literally showing up to church.
Okay.
But if they're at a school, I don't know their background. And I know from what they've said, from what our students who go to this school have said, there's a lot of kids there that don't believe in Jesus, or maybe they are a member at a church, but they don't go anymore. So that's who I feel like really compelled to speak to in those spaces.
Do either of you have any, we know about Maddie, how you feel about chapel sometimes, but any thoughts on that?
I would say that Ryan does a really good job of appealing to those kids.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
Sometimes I actually can relate to, but sometimes people will sit up there and it's the same, something from Matthew. I don't know. It's the same thing every time. And I'm like, I still don't understand because they're not they're not getting me into the story, asking questions and stuff. Whenever if someone I know is doing it, I feel like I listen better than someone that has done it for many years and they're not really relating it to our lives today and how, I don't know, teenagers today relate that to them instead of relating it to a Sunday morning with audience from 3 to older age. So it's relating it to teenagers.
It is hard, I'll say, to bring all of that in. And so I do empathize for the people, especially the pastors that come in and they're not a youth minister. They're a pastor that they don't speak to teenagers on a regular basis. And so I do empathize for them there, but it's a tough crowd. Not because there's anything wrong with y'all. It's just a tough crowd.
It is a tough crowd.
And it comes back to kind of what I said with Audrey and Jenna. You teenagers, you're almost adults. So I can almost speak to you like an adult, and yet you're also still growing and still learning. So what does someone in that position need to hear? Someone who's becoming independent, yet isn't fully independent. Someone who maybe grew up in the church, but has forgotten all the stories. There's many variables there. It's got to be a nuanced message, a nuanced thing to speak to them. This brings me to a question that I want to know as an adult, and Jill probably wants to know it too. What do you wish adults understood better about teenagers?
I feel like a lot of people expect high schoolers to grow up right away. And you're right, you're talking to people that are about to go into adulthood, but I think it's also important to remember we're not in adulthood though. So the expectations that are put on high schoolers are a lot of the time to be an adult. You need to have long job, lots of hours, get paid a lot. You need to do your own taxes and stuff. I have friends that are getting their oil changed and their car repaired all the time, and they're helping their mom pay bills, and I'm oh my gosh, you're still a kid. So I wish sometimes, I guess, that adults would understand that, we still want the high school experience. We are still a kid, and, you didn't get that experience when you were in middle school, elementary school. So once you're in high school, we're eager to still be kids, and we're not exactly ready to grow up. And there is a point when you should encourage them to, but I feel even my freshman year, I was told all the time, you're about to go to college, you need a plan right now. I'm what? I just got into high school.
I'm 14.
I know, I'm my little brother's going into high school right now. He's not going to college anytime soon, but he kind of is, and he's going to start having those conversations right now. And I feel that can be a lot of pressure on someone sometimes.
I would say kind of branching off of that though, I just feel a lot, we see a bunch of other teenagers our age that are influencers and stuff, and they're making so much money and doing all these platforms and everything, and we see that and we kind of feel more bad about ourselves, oh, should we be doing that? And then we should still be kids though. So it's there's a lot of different perspectives of a teenager nowadays that I think adults can get kind of confused with and kind of, because, like, when my mom's always like, when I was younger, and I'm like, no, but it's, like, kind of, like, different now, like, because we have, like, phones and stuff and different technology and cars. I mean, they had cars, but, like...
Yeah.
I just thought of that.
Back in the 1900s, I was born then.
How old is your mom?
They had cars, so she's always like, I never got to call people. I just had to show up at their house. I'm like, yeah, but now, like, we have phones and, like, technology to, like, do stuff. So, like, I feel like they almost had to grow up faster than, like, we had to grow up with, like, maturing and everything.
That's a great point, both of you. Your comment about seeing, I think our culture does see so many young people get really famous, really rich, really quickly. And it's funny because I don't know what parents are saying to Gen Z in this regards, but I grew up in the culture where the internet was just coming to the foray. Gaming was just coming to the foray, and we were all told, don't get into gaming. You're not going to get anywhere with that. It's just a waste of time. And don't get into spend all your time online because this is not going to get you anywhere either. And now the richest, most successful people are the people that spend all their time gaming and on the internet. And so it's just kind of funny how quickly things have changed. And maybe that's where some of that pressure is coming from. It's the pressure of, we want to get stuff out of our life. We want a good job and we want money. And so it's almost like, okay, if I get started just a little sooner, I'll have an edge. Well, then everyone else starts a little sooner, right? And so you got to start a little further back, and you start a little further back. And now you have, people putting their kids into specific, like, elementary schools to set themselves up for the future. And I'm just like, wow, we are really planning this life far in advance. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I can see how that builds into that pressure. I'm curious, Ivy, you said, it sounded like you were saying you wish adults were more patient with teenagers because you're almost adults, but not quite yet. And I remember your college decision process. That was an interesting one because you were coming right up to the end. And I remember your mom coming up to me and saying, Ivy's still deciding. And I, checked my calendar and realized it was April of your senior year. Did you need a push at some point to come to that decision? Are you simmering in it still? Like, how did you reach that decision of, I'm going to Northern Arizona University?
Yeah, I forget a lot that I'm actually going. So sometimes I'm like, wait, what? I think I'm still in middle school. Like, I don't know. I feel so young, but like also sometimes I definitely feel like I'm really old and I should be adulting or something. But it took a while for me to decide, I think, because I was so focused on what I was doing in high school. I was really involved in dance, and dance season lasts until like March. So, like everyone else like was kind of done with their stuff, and they were like, okay, so like let's move on to the next chapter. And I was still so excited about going to prom, and like I was really excited about, I don't know, just lots of things. And actually I was prom dress shopping in Arizona with my aunt whenever we decided to like go tour Northern Arizona University. And it wasn't because I was necessarily going to go. It was just kind of for fun. Her twin boys are going there with me next year, and they're my age. So we went and toured, and I was like, yeah, like this is like my second favorite school. I was like, I'm not going here though. Like, and I remember like flying home, and like my parents were like talking to me, and they're like, well, this is like an actual possibility. Like, this would make sense. Like, this is a good school. Like, you should like potentially go here. And I'm like, yeah, like maybe later. Like, it was like,
in like 4 months.
I know. It was like, wait, actually it's like really soon. Like maybe I should make that decision. Like, I don't know. And then I remember whenever I guess we kind of did make the decision, like I hadn't even realized that we did make the decision. And so I was texting one of my friends, and like I went over to her house and I was talking to her and her mom, and they're like, oh, so like have you decided college? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to Northern Arizona. And they were like, what? Like, you didn't tell anyone? And I was like, oh, like, I guess I didn't. I don't know. It just feels like it's, like, so far in the future that, like, I didn't need to tell anyone. So, I don't know. I think some people don't know where I'm going, but I've tried to tell more people.
Yeah. Yeah. There is it's an awkward balance of wanting to be patient with your kid as a parent. I'm glad they did speak a little bit to you and say, this is a real possibility, Right. And I would say to parents, it's important to listen to your kids. It's important to, you want them to listen to you, be reciprocal in that. be willing to listen to them, be willing to be patient with them, but also don't say nothing. Don't have no voice. I've seen the inverse problem where a parent can be so passive and so uninvolved that it ends up having negative effect. And so again, it's just a tough balance. I'm glad you had parents that were patient, probably a little impatient at times,
Yes, maybe.
pointed you directions, but also let you arrive to that decision yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. As we're talking about adults, you've got a lot of Christian leaders at our church that are adults. As teenagers, what are you looking for from Christian leaders such as myself or our pastors or small group leaders? All these adults that you have in your life, what are you looking for from them?
From like Christian leaders and from like my small group leader, especially we break off into the boy-girl small groups, I feel like I can really like talk to them about my faith and stuff and like just trust between the conversation, like what we're talking about. So I feel like it's more like a trust, but also like I want to hear like their story too, so like I can learn life experiences from them as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like whenever I was like freshman, sophomore, maybe even junior in high school, I was looking a little more for like, you know, a lot of guidance and someone to like talk about my problems with and that kind of thing. And lately I feel like I've been looking a little more for somebody that, you know, is similar-ish in age to me, someone that like recently like went through what I'm about to go through that can like give me advice. So I know like one of our leaders, she's still in college. And so like she's like able to talk to me about like what she just went through and like how her like first year of college was. And that's like really helpful for me right now, like almost to have like a friend that's still older than me, still can give me advice and stuff, but someone that I can talk to more that like, you know, like relates to me. And I know some leaders can be at other churches that I've been at. They're like older leaders. And not that those people can't have wisdom for you. I absolutely think they can. But it was a little harder for them to connect because it would be like, you know, back in my day, like this is what we did. And I'm like, well, college has changed a lot since then. And high school has changed a lot since then. And, you know, I don't know. It's a different kind of like relation. So I'm really thankful that we have like younger leaders that have gone through like experiences that I'm about to go through and can talk to me about that.
In looking for some of that guidance, I'm curious, do you want to reach out to that leader and get that and say, hey, I could use some wisdom on this? Or would it work better for that person to reach out to you? Because this is a big question in small groups. Like, should the adult be the first to reach out and engage and, hey, you're going to this next stage of your life. How can I help you? Or would you rather be the one to initiate that conversation?
I think that the adult should initiate it at first because sometimes we're just not comfortable or we're not really sure that they even want that kind of relationship. And I know our leaders do, but some leaders don't want that. And so if they initiate it first, then I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable being like coming back to them and saying, okay, I have another question. Like, can we talk about this? Because I've already established that they want to talk to me and that they'll answer my questions. They'll help me out with that.
I think a lot of times people in leadership roles at a church think, you know, you can say from a stage, my door's always open. You can come to me whenever you want. And that's true and great. And I think I've said that before, but I have to remind myself that sometimes I have to be willing to go up and myself have the courage to ask you how you're doing and where you're at. Because as awkward and nervous as it might be for me to ask you that question, you're probably feeling the same way or even more because you're a teenager coming to an adult with questions about your life. And so maybe for us leaders in the church, not a position of a passive open door and not a position of just telling you what I think and walking away, but a position of curiosity and coming and asking, how are you? How's it going? And letting the conversation go from there. Maybe that's the right approach. I'm out of questions, but this has been a good conversation. Jill, do you?
Well, I can't let you go, Ivy, without talking about being, is it known as a PK?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Pastor's kid. We learned about that earlier on when we first launched. Talk briefly about that. I mean, is there this pressure that you put on yourself? Is there pressure that people put on you? I would have to think that, like, what is that like? And why are we so obsessed with wanting to know what it's like to be a pastor's child or kid?
Yes, it's definitely a well thought of experience that people want to know about, because I guess not many people get that experience.
No.
Definitely being at a private school, more people have asked me that.
Okay.
Because I guess maybe they know more that I'm a pastor's kid because my dad comes around.
And there's probably a few pastors' kids at the school.
There are also, yes, more pastor's kids than I've ever seen in one place.
Okay.
At this school, there's a lot of them. So I'm like, oh, wow, like people that I can relate to. But there is this good versus bad pastor's kid that everyone has an idea that you are either a good pastor's kid or a bad pastor's kid. And if you're a good pastor's kid, you have to be very good. Like, you are an angel. Everyone thinks you're the nicest person in the whole world. Like, you're so sweet. Like, everyone has really good things to say about you, teacher's pet, that kind of thing. And otherwise, you're a bad pastor's kid. And bad pastor's kids are known for rebelling because they've, I guess, had this really structured, like, parental guidance their whole life. And I think they want people to think, like, different of them. I don't know, that they have, like, different values. They're more fun than their parents would expect of them. And so that's kind of a bad place to get grouped into. I've been told before that I'm a bad pastor's kid. They didn't explain it to me, but I've also been told I'm a good one. So I don't know. I don't know if I really care.
Oh, this is, we really do have the binary nature of our culture is so frustrating sometimes. Mm-hmm. Those are big, heady words. We divide things into two sides.
Yeah.
Republican, Democrat,
private, public.
Private, public. You're either a Christian who knows everything, or if you don't know everything, then you must not be a Christian. And you're either a good pastor's kid or a bad pastor's kid. What if people are people that have multiple sides to them? They're multifaceted, that have sides that are good and helpful and sides that are broken and struggling. What if that's how we all were? And what if pastors' kids were the same way?
I was just going to say, or what if Ivy is just a kid who has a mom and a dad?
And they do good things and they make mistakes. And Ivy has done great things and she's made mistakes.
But I still like to know.
No, I was actually, whenever I found out you were a pastor's kid, I was kind of like scared because I was like, oh no, she's going to judge me. I went to public school. Like, she's like, oh my gosh. And then she's like, I went to public school. I was like, what? Are you a pastor's kid? And I was like, she kind of relates to me though, because we both go to public school. We're like the only ones on the dance team, I think, that went to public school.
It's just a title.
Yeah, it's literally just a title.
Yep.
Well, I just think it's been a joy to listen to the both of you and just totally different dynamics and backgrounds. And I will say this as a little bit of a background to the listener. When we were putting together the thought process on the faith of the next generation and the high school kids that Ryan wanted to bring in, he has nailed it so far. I mean, this is why you do what you do. And in our last episode, in this episode, you had the ladies describe each other in one word. Well, I think that we already know the word for you, and it's relatable. And so I am so glad that this is what you're doing. I don't think that people would come on like Ivy and Maddie to talk about their experience if it wasn't the experience like this. They would not. I don't feel like you girls are forced to be here. Like, you really are excited about this and excited about what Ryan's doing and what's going to happen in the future generations. So thanks to all three of you.
Love this conversation. And it makes me want to learn more about the both of you. That both these conversations have made me want to follow up with you two, with the other two. And I'm guessing that's how they're all going to be.
Yeah. So we're going to bring the boys in for the next episode. We're going to have their perspective, and I don't even know what to think. Like, I have some different things going on in my mind that I think might happen, but I shouldn't assume that. So that is going to be the next route we take. We're going to get the guys' perspective. So make sure you are listening for our next episode of Normal Goes a Long Way. Thanks, ladies.